Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, and I do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but I don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. I'm just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. And today we welcome back a special guest to help co-host, Jeremy, the co-founder of Ledgerama, who are the makers of Walla Wallet. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I love to have you all the time. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So one thing I think a lot of our viewers probably realized is last night we had a pretty good drop-off in the market. I think there's a few things that are working into that. The big one probably being Silvergate, which is a bank that served all kind of crypto entities, including FTX. I'm sure a lot of the collateral that they took to make those loans is impaired now, so they're running into trouble. There's a good chance that that bank is going to fail, so that's spooking the entire market. And there's also some regulatory things that are coming out that I think are spooking the market as well. So there's a new rule that the SEC wants to enact, or at least some people in the SEC wants to enact, that will impact crypto exchanges, and then also financial advisors who would like to work in the crypto space. So the US SEC chairman, Gary Gensler, he's one of the supporters, and he said the new rule would enhance protections provided by qualified custodians in light of new authorities granted by Congress in 2010. Just because a crypto trading platform claims to be a qualified custodian doesn't mean that it is. When these platforms fail, investors' assets often have become property of the failed company, leaving investors in line in bankruptcy court. But even within the SEC, there is some opposition. And of course, we talk about Crypto Mom all the time. Hester Pierce, she is the SEC commissioner. She took the opposing view, arguing that the new rule will encourage investment advisors to back away immediately from advising their clients with respect to crypto. So, Jeremy, it sounds like this could have some impacts on the space, but also Gary Gensler has reiterated recently that he thinks all of the cryptocurrencies out there, except for Bitcoin, are securities, and that could seriously have some impacts as well. I really don't understand that line of rationale, because Bitcoin started fairly centralized with just a few players and has become decentralized over time. It doesn't make sense to give preferential treatment legally to that first mover and not allow other platforms to have a similar path to move forward. What are your general thoughts on regulation in this space?
Well, it doesn't seem that they really know what they're doing. It looks like they're just kind of feeling in the dark, and that they're kind of shooting from the hip. When I see certain regulations, obviously we want to have rules. We want to know what the rules of the road are. Otherwise, the roads are just not safe to travel. But when I get concerned is when I see things like them telling professionals like advisors what they can and can't advise their clients about. It's similar to the government getting involved in the medical field, and also with insurance and the government getting involved in the medical industry, having an effect on what doctors telling their patients they can and can't do, or advising their patients one way or the other. So I do get concerned when they start telling the professionals what they can and can't tell their clients.
That makes a lot of sense. And also, you said the rules of the road, and that reminds me of another heavy-handed regulation that came out over 100 years ago, and it was in the UK, and it had to do with automobiles. And what they said was, essentially, you had to have 3 people to operate a car. You had to have a driver, of course, that makes sense. You had to have an engineer to maintain the engine, and you also had to have a flagger to run out in front of the car and warn pedestrians and other people that were in the area that the car was coming through. This is the kind of heavy-handed, I'm sure that was supported by, the horse breeders and the cart manufacturers and buggy manufacturers and things like that. But I think that most of our regulators and legislators learned an important point when it came to the internet in the early 90s. There were a lot of regulators that came out that, for the most part, I don't think really understood the potential of the internet, but they wanted to have heavy-handed regulation as well. And they would come out with all these reasons we needed to protect the public. And I don't think history treated them very kindly, looking back on their views and the way they wanted to go about things. And Jeremy, I think the best way we can shape regulation is to show these legislators, show these regulators the value of these platforms outside of speculation. And a great example of that is what we saw come out of WiPay this past week. We caught up with the CEO of WiPay, Aldwin Wayne, to give us an update of what was announced this week. Aldwin, can you start off just explaining what WiPay is?
So thanks. WiPay is a payment processing platform for the Caribbean. So what that is in the Caribbean, WiPay acts as a payment facilitator that allows for businesses and individuals to accept payments point of presence and online by simply adding WePay as an option. So that's Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Union Pay, whatever your favorite mobile wallet is that we're connected to. You can now accept payments from all those methods just by connecting WePay to your website or your mobile app.
Okay, and how big is WePay in the Caribbean? How many customers or businesses use it?
So the Caribbean, we're about 57,000 businesses. Now remember, our customer base is people that either making or receiving payments. So it's not peer-to-peer. So in a population size that's, just about 5-6 million people in the English-speaking Caribbean, I think, we have a pretty good penetration from the business side at 57,000.
Yeah, I'd say for sure. And how exactly does WePay leverage Hedera?
Yeah, so WePay, before we get to leveraging Hedera, the problem that we wanted to solve was based around the fact that the Caribbean is a bunch of small islands in very close proximity. Each one have their own central bank and their own monetary systems that's separate and apart from the other. So how do you network 17 islands that's really close, but have different monetary systems? WePay, which exists in each of those countries, would work, but only at a local level because it's going to be regulated locally. What Hedera allowed us to do is connect each of these WePay wallets with Hedera's network, utilizing a stablecoin that's built on your token services to keep the value between each island that's currently existing for regular fiat trade.
Okay, understood. And what exactly was launched this week?
So we've been testing for, well over 6 months, a stable coin that exists in all 57,000 wallets that we have or businesses that we have to have value traded between two countries that have a different forex value of trade. So we've been testing closed loop. Hey, this stable coin, which maintains that value for trade, how would it work now if it's open up to the public? And that's what was launched this week. It's open to the public. You exist on WePay's network. Access to that stablecoin. So you could buy this stablecoin within your WePay account with currency X, transfer it to any WePay account between WePay Trinidad to WePay Ghana, and that stablecoin can now be converted back out into that local WePay account in the local currency in the receiving country.
I love it. This is exactly what Hedera is all about, solving real world problems. So what are some of your next steps?
So we've tested it internally. We've now launched it on the WePay network, WePay platform. The next steps is to grow this network within other mobile wallets and mobile platforms. So the goal for WeCoin and our network, which is built on Hedera, is to connect wallets together. So you have 100 wallets in Kenya, you have 100 wallets in Zimbabwe. Instead of having a customer load, each of these wallets on their account, we could connect all of them with our network. So yes, we're starting off doing cross-border, but the real value is providing a settlement network or rails for mobile wallets and mobile money providers to connect independent of the existing bank or Visa or MasterCard network. And that's the goal is for our network. So we're starting off internally. We have, in the Caribbean, about 57,000 businesses, and then personal accounts, we have probably about 100,000 of those. We start off just working with those. That's what was launched this week within the WePay ecosystem. And gradually, once the network, works as it should, we start adding other mobile wallets and network processing companies and payment platforms onto the network.
It sounds like you are absolutely at the cutting edge of fintech. Alduin, thank you so much for coming by and telling us about your revolutionary platform.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I love what WePay is doing. It's an incredible service to provide to the folks that are on the Caribbean islands. I mean, to have multiple island nations within such close proximity that do tons of trading, and for them to each have their own fiat currency with different forex exchange rates and things like that. I mean, it's got to be an incredible task to surmount. And they're doing really great things for the developer community as well. I've noticed that they've got developer-friendly APIs for integrating things like WooCommerce and Shopify and Wix and other things like that. So they're doing a lot of great things, and they're building the tools that the developers are going to need to help integrate with their products as well. And seeing companies like WiPay taking a network like Hedera and using it not only for the transactional capacity, right, and transacting value across the network, but making it actually useful, right? So in the past, we've seen currencies that have been successful kind of before the fiat days, things like gold. I mean, gold has actual utility. Things like the Inuits used seal oil, right? So seal oil was something that they could transport in small amounts, but it was also something that they could use to burn, right? So the usefulness of a payment system is really important, and it's great to see companies like WiPay really shining a light on the utility of a network like Hedera.
Yeah, great points. And, we do focus on use cases and network utilization all the time. But another big story that came out this week was Brian Brooks joining the HBAR Foundation. And this kind of blew my mind. What were your initial thoughts when you saw Brian join the HBAR Foundation board?
Well, a big smile came across my face right away. So Brian Brooks is one of the most eloquent speakers that I have ever seen when it comes to topics of fintech and regulation. I follow regulations pretty closely. I've always been kind of a C-SPAN nerd, right? So I love watching C-SPAN and watching the regulators up there on Capitol Hill doing what they do. And so, of course, I've watched a lot of the crypto hearings that have gone in front of the Senate. And Brian Brooks is one of those voices of reason. When he speaks, the leaders listen, right? And I love some of his analogies. We were talking a little bit ago about rules of the road. I actually lifted that from Brian Brooks. He talks about imagine if truckers in the United States didn't know that the speed limit was 75 miles an hour, right? And that instead of having a speed limit, they had these kind of 4-factor tests, like how much sleep the driver had the night before, what the weight of the payload was, what the quality of the tires was, and all these things, and that would determine, like, you got to know what the speed limit is. So he's just a great speaker, and he's a voice of reason. And like I said, when he speaks, the folks up on Capitol Hill listen. So I think that he's a fantastic addition to the HBAR Foundation board. Really happy to see that. I think it's a great thing for Hedera and really a great thing for crypto in general.
I absolutely agree. And here's a clip of him talking on Capitol Hill.
The reason for the centralization of the internet, of course, was that all of that activity was being monetized by a very small number of companies. Facebook, as the chairwoman mentions, Google, and 2 or 3 other companies. What makes Web3 different is the ability to own the actual network. And that's what crypto assets themselves represent, is an ownership stake in an underlying network. So when you hear people talk about, for example, layer 1 tokens, what they mean is this is your reward for providing the ledger maintenance services, the computing power to the network that on Web 1 and 2 was done by Google, right? So now people in my hometown of Pueblo, Colorado can actually own the Ethereum network, but they can't own the internet. That's owned by Google and a few other companies. That's what the project of crypto is all about, is allowing people to directly own the networks that have native assets that are supporting it, and that's the nature of decentralization.
So, Jeremy, it's great to see him as an addition, and here's what he said about joining the HBAR Foundation board. Advancing responsible, widespread adoption of DLT and Web3 is something I feel passionately about, and I'm thrilled to work with the talented teams across the HBAR Foundation to make this a reality. The HBAR Foundation, through a comprehensive grant program, has successfully grown awareness, accelerated access, and increased commerce in the HBAR economy by providing expert support across technology, marketing, and business development. Together, we will continue to be thought leaders and drive the industry forward to deliver on the vision of making Hedera the trust layer of the internet. And Jeremy, in this week's segment for Shark Bites with Rob Allen, he has some thoughts as well, so let's listen to that. But he also got into a lot of other stuff. Welcome back, Rob.
Hey, Brandon. It's great to be back.
Yeah. So, Rob, the thing I wanted to start off with today is some big news we got from the HBAR Foundation, and that's that Brian Brooks, he's the former comptroller of the currency, so one of the top regulators in the United States, joined the board of the HBAR Foundation. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's an amazing story and a huge appointment. Brian was, as you say, a former federal regulator, but also served his time on crypto boards. He was in Bitfury. He was chief legal officer at Coinbase. So he brings a huge amount of experience and expertise across the piece, and I think is a great fit for for the foundation board. I mean, boards are necessary parts of organization to set culture, to set governance, to set strategy for an organization, and to oversee risk. So I think he has all the stripes to do that, and he joins Shane Higdon, Jason Lowe, and Bob Migliorini on the board. So they've said that they're growing that board over the course of the next year. It's very important that you get the right appointments to a board, which sets, like I said, the overall culture and strategy for the organization. So great to see what Brian's going to bring to the foundation, and watch this space.
Yeah, it surprised me for sure. I would say that Brian is probably the best spokesperson, not just for Hedera, but for the crypto industry in general when it comes to regulators and legislators just across the board. I was just impressed. Like you said, he's I think the CEO now of Bitfury. He was the chief legal officer at Coinbase. He was the CEO for a short time at Binance US. Just a really impressive resume, and obviously he is. Hedera is on his radar. So I was just happy to see it. It's something that I wasn't expecting, but it's good to see.
And that range of skills really shows the positioning, not just a foundation, but the Hedera ecosystem as a whole. So I think it's super positive and very bullish.
Yeah, for sure. So last week you mentioned you might have some information on the Koala Hash Club collaborations. What do you got for us?
So, from Brian Brooks to Koala Hash Club, that's a great segue. So the Koala Boys are kicking goals. The NFT obviously ecosystem is vibrant and thriving in Hedera, but given the Australian connection, not just with koalas, which are an endangered species here, but the Koala Club guys wanting to donate a percentage of proceeds of all koala sales to koala sanctuaries here in Australia, and the involvement of Ant Middleton, who's a media celebrity, author, speaker on positivity, and a presenter of a number of shows, which I'm not sure how widely they're distributed, but certainly in Australia, he's a very big media celebrity. He runs SAS Australia. He's just been filming a new show called Millionaire Island. So he's bigger than you, Brandon, in terms of the weights he does. So he's the global champion for the Koala Hash Club project, and so we had our first call with a koala sanctuary, which I've helped facilitate last week. So things are moving. It's great to see the positivity there. The ways that the Web3 space and the koala guys are kind of engaging, what a very conservative organizations. These are people who are focused almost entirely on saving species. They don't know anything about crypto. And so introducing them into this space and doing it sensitively and also with beneficial outcomes for everyone, including the koalas, it's great to see. So I'm loving that ride and just kind of joining the dots. And hopefully in June, when Ant Middleton's next in Australia, we'll get everyone together and we'll plan out the drop and plan out how the partnership will work going forward.
Yeah, he seems like a really genuinely nice guy, just all around. We had him on a Twitter space.
Yeah.
I've talked to him a couple times. It's just a super nice guy. But if you thought my last segue wasn't very smooth, this one's going to even be more abrupt. We're going to be going from NFTs and refi to stablecoins.
Stablecoins and DeFi. Yep.
So, Rob, a lot of your career has been in the payment space, and of course, that's continuing with Hedera. Can you give us an update on the latest when it comes to stablecoins within the Hedera ecosystem?
Well, they're massive. So, yeah, like you said, I've been working in the payment space for more than 20 years. I've actually built stablecoin platforms on other blockchains. When I was with PwC, we did a Bitcoin fork and looked at ways of creating currency pegged tokens, which weren't called stablecoins back in 2015, but are now. And on multi-chain, and tried on Ethereum and failed, so stablecoins and payments went kind of hand in hand. And in fact, it was my entry into the Hedera ecosystem was looking for a distributed ledger that would operate payments at scale, micropayments. That kind of led me into Hedera in the first place. So this is really very close to my heart. And we've got a number of stablecoin type projects. The ANZ Bank project that we announced like over a year ago now, which is progressing in stealth, but is super interesting. We've got a number of banks. We've got banks on the governing council experimenting with tokenizing fiat currency for use cases like cross-border remittance, for wholesale payments. There's a very big overlap between CBDCs and stablecoins. So stablecoins issued within backed by central bank money is effectively a CBDC. Whether or not it's implemented as a public ledger or a private ledger, the architecture, the technology is largely the same. And these are mostly done, especially on other chains, these are done as smart contracts, right? So that's the way that the stablecoin kind of architecture is usually designed. And this is how we did it with ANZ Bank as well. Oh, and by the way, the announcement about WiPay just yesterday is all about stablecoins. And that's the whole of the Caribbean. This news has largely gone under the radar, but WiPay is a massive footprint, island to island, dealing with real problems, about cross currency and trade, and all of these use cases.
Not too far under the radar, Rob. I just talked to Aldwin from WiPay, so we got the skinny on that.
Fantastic,
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. They have 57,000 businesses that use WiPay, so they have a lot of reach down there in the Caribbean.
They certainly do, and they've got a really interesting use case because they're using a basket of currencies, I believe. That it's pegged to US dollar with some kind of uplift for FX and cost, and then there's a basket backing it, so like a special drawing rights the International Monetary Fund kind of administers. So that's a really, really interesting architecture. So the smart contract approach is all well and good, but it's very limited. And as we know, we've got a smart contract based EVM on Hedera, which is best in class, 20 or so times more efficient and faster than EVMs on other chains. But we can do better. Right, so we've got the Hedera token service, which operates at the speed and security and scale and fair ordering of Hedera. So why not use that? And this is where Swirls Labs kind of decided that we can do better. And using the experience with ANZ Bank and others, Greg Skeller, who's a friend of all, and I'm sure pretty much everyone knows him, is one of the lead developer advocates at Swirls Labs. He's been running a project called the Stablecoin Accelerator, and he's told me I can talk about this, so this isn't anything that's confidential. And we're about to open source this technology anyway. The key thing here is that you use smart contracts for administrative functions, where you can apply key management to individuals, so it can be very, very much role-based. All of those features that you see on a Hedera token of mint and burn and transfer and wipe and freeze and KYC, all of those really rich functions that are native to the Hedera token. can also be attributed to a smart contract. So that enables you to have a wrapper that you can assign different roles to or different individuals, which for banks is really important because then you can assign SOC 2 compliance and other kind of regulatory controls over those functions with the stablecoin. What you can also do is to kind of provide hooks into integration services such as custody, such as fraud monitoring, proof of reserves, audits. So all of these additional services that wrap around the stablecoin can actually be done through the smart contract. But the transfers are still going at super light speed and at the speed of Hedera with all the other beneficial properties of the layer one. So we're very, very excited about what the stablecoin accelerator from Swirls Labs can be used for. And coming back to the origin story for me and for you within Hedera micropayments, if you issue a stablecoin on Hedera that uses the native token service, you get micropayments out of the box. And it's not a closed loop system. This is in an open loop. This is in a public ledger, which means that it's a huge game changer. You've got this core primitive, which provides all the features that are bank grade, running on Hedera, which is, lightning quick. And as we know, very, very cheap to operate with predictable low costs. For me, all of those micropayments use cases that I was dreaming about in 2015 suddenly become possible. And not only are they possible, we're working with people to actually implement them. So watch this space on that because stablecoins are going to change the world.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it with Mike Maloney this past week, talking about all the potential that's coming out of Drop and, Internet of Things. And I know you've even talked about some of the potential when it comes to smart cities and everything along those lines. And I know that, CBDCs get an awful lot of attention, but that kind of framework doesn't even exist. Like that's almost theoretical at this point, but most of the money that comes into existence that we use today is commercial bank issued money, right? So it just makes sense that these stable coins produced by commercial banks are going to be the first step. Of course, we have the private USDC and everything along those lines, but commercial banks are going to get involved, and the ones that don't, they're going to be left behind. So there's, like you said, there's so much potential here with the efficiency of Hedera and, like you said, bank grade security and everything else.
I will reference the CBDC point though, because the central banks of the world who are have been experimenting and looking with first generation tech, if you like, sort of either private permissioned ledgers or forks of public ledgers, which are, constrained by the trilemma, are starting now to see the possibilities of next generation distributed ledgers. So the thinking has been that you have a wholesale set of CBDC use cases, which are very private and closed around commercial banking relationships with central banks and omnibus accounts and that sort of thing, safe and closed, and the great unwashed don't get to touch them. And then you've got the retail CBDCs, which probably need some kind of cash-like component, maybe some kind of offline component. Certainly a lot more difficult and lead to closed loop systems or accusations of surveillance capitalism and et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got the next layer, which is the privately issued stablecoins. But actually, all of these things are variants on the same thing when you look at it from an architectural perspective, and from Hedera's perspective. And we can see this with what MTech are doing with their sandbox. All the people who are building on Hedera with a financial services perspective look like it's a blend. There's a continuum there, and you rightly said with Mike Maloney, the IoT use cases, the micropayments use cases, extend right to the edge. Dale is talking about edge computing. So all of these things are part of the same kind of ecosystem at play. And there's no reason why it can't all be underpinned by a distributed ledger like Hedera. So exciting times ahead.
Exciting for sure. Rob, thank you so much for swinging by again, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brandon. See you next week. Bye.
Always good to hear from Rob, and we also have a lot of great stuff going on in ecosystem development. So Lumos Labs, they are out of Asia. They're getting support from the HBAR Foundation. They've already had a cohort of 3 teams that have gotten support from the HBAR Foundation, and now they're looking for their next cohort. There are 3 $50,000 prizes paid out in HBAR that are going to be given out. So if anybody's interested, definitely check that one out. And this next one caught me by surprise, and it's out of the Hashgraph Association. The Hashgraph Association has committed 100 million euros to support fintech and blockchain startups with the aim of empowering young entrepreneurs to adopt digital assets and DeFi. And Jeremy, what caught my eye out of this is they allocated 100 million euros. You know, I'm actually working with the Swiss Hashgraph Association with my startup, Twigital, but I didn't know they had these kind of assets. So just in general, what are your thoughts about these accelerators, and have you gotten any support from different accelerators in the space? What's your experience been?
Well, so yeah, that 100 million euros, that is an eye-popping number, right? So yeah, I hadn't heard that. So I'm a little bit floored. I'm trying to pick my jaw up off of the table here. But no, of course, these are hugely important, and they're just critical to the development of an ecosystem like this. I say this to folks a lot of the times that really we're largely in R&D. We're in a research and development phase of this technology. It's so early still. I mean, there's things that have been proven out, and there's tooling that's getting better, but we are still very early. So you've got to have funds like these to support people. So we did receive support from the HBAR Foundation, which we're incredibly grateful for. We hit those milestones that we were under contract to hit, and it's been incredibly helpful. I mean, when you look at the numbers, since we launched version 2 of Walla Wallet with support from the foundation, our numbers are all going in a very positive direction. So that's just a prime example of how important these funds and accelerators are for the ecosystem.
Yeah, without a doubt, the HBAR is being used the way it was initially intended. But I want to shift gears a little bit because I got in touch with Calaxy. Calaxy's coming out with all kinds of great things. They're doing a lot behind the scenes. They're building a pretty big vision. So, of course, that takes time. But now they're establishing their DAO, so people are starting to vote on things there. And they're, of course, working on their app, which when it comes out, I know is going to be mind-blowing. But we caught up with Solo. He's the CEO at Calaxy to give us an update. Solo, you guys seem to be ramping up a lot at Calaxy. Can you give us the latest?
Yeah, absolutely. So last week, the Creators Galaxy protocol actually started its process in decentralizing itself. And so through CGIPs 1 and 2, the community can vote on that. And everybody that's a part of the community are token holders. We really want to be able to help set the standard for what DAO governance models could look like. And so to decentralize the technology, that Calaxy app that a lot of people are familiar with is super exciting and empowering for the community. And it's really nice to make sure that there are going to be those community building tools and infrastructural tools to incentivize builders to come to Hedera and build things like Calaxy on top of the Creators Galaxy protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what are some of the next steps you guys have?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's going to be a typical governance process. And so voting is actually live up until Wednesday. And so community holders or token holders are going to be able to vote on CGIPs 1 and 2. And assuming those pass, we'll be able to set up the infrastructure for what the DAO governance model really looks like. There's a list of 7 stewards that are actually on CGIPs 1, powerful, notable people within the community. And so a lot of influencer type, Hedera awareness, OG type stewards that we thought would be great representatives of the community, or at least the community thought that they'd be great representatives of the Creators Galaxy protocol. And so, we're super excited to really take those next steps and then really start honing in and focusing on Calaxy's core competencies, which is developing consumer-facing applications for, content creators and people that follow social media.
All right, well, let's focus on that a little bit about what Calaxy's actually doing. At this point, how do you envision the Hedera community getting involved?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think to take a step back, because it's very important and very difficult nowadays, just given the regulatory regime on how you can communicate these things. And so taking a step back, there's the Creators Galaxy protocol, which is built on as a decentralized open source protocol for builders of social token applications as well as NFT applications. And that's a network built on Hedera. And then Calaxy is the first application built on top of this protocol for its use case, which is the sort of Cameo style Patreon creator model where content creators are able to connect with their fans and their communities and sort of monetize those experiences directly, as opposed to the antiquated social media model where it's like, let's get a bunch of people in here. Hopefully you're one of the more popping people in here, and the brand deals approach you because you can market that to your audience, right? You're very indirectly helping someone pay bills when it's like, your fans are here for you. Why are you selling them Nike products and hoping that Nike gives you a cut of the check, right? And so Calaxy is very much so focused on redefining what that model should look like. And there's just a huge opportunity within the creator economy to sort of monetize those experiences. And so we're super excited about the future, what that might look like.
So, Solo, you guys focus a fair amount on the creator middle class. You have some really big names that are associated, but, I'm trying to break into that creator middle class. My wife is doing the same. How do you think Calaxy will help them leverage their small businesses?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Calaxy is actually the perfect toolkit for the creator middle class, right? So like when you think about the big name celebrities and things like that, they're obviously great for press headlines. They're very great for for motioning or sort of mobilizing the entire creator economy. But when you think about the incentive to want to connect with the fan and monetize the experience, it's far greater for a middle class creator who makes their primary means of income or is trying to turn content creation into a primary means of income versus somebody like Ezekiel Elliott who gets paid a boatload of money a year to do what he does very well, admittedly, but the idea is a very different sort of model within the creator economy. People get paid for sports, they get paid for acting. People don't really get paid for content creation. And so it's on us as creators ourselves, because we are also built for creators by creators. It's on us to build our own tools to help monetize those experiences and really help contribute to content creation. I think in the future, content creation could sort of die or never really make it to where it could be if the incentive is no longer there for the middle class. So that's a very big focus area for us.
Exciting stuff, Solo. Thank you so much for coming by, and good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me on.
Yeah, I love the Calaxy team. We work pretty closely with one of their developers on a regular basis. Just a great guy and such a talent in the space. You haven't heard a whole lot about Calaxy in the news and the press lately, but don't count them out of the picture because, like you said, they are building in the background and there are things happening. So I expect to see great things coming out of Calaxy in the pretty near future.
Yeah, he showed me a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the stuff that they're working on, and as soon as that's public, we'll certainly get him back to give us some more information. All right, let's get into some FUD busting. What do you think?
Oh, I love FUD busting. It's one of my favorite activities.
So when it comes to FUD, one of the things that has been coming up is talking about the Hedera transaction volume and rolling it into some of the things that they talk about with Solana. We've talked about this a few times, but it got reignited this week when Solana had another unplanned outage. So they talked about Solana's transaction volume. And one of the things with Solana is some of the transactions that they count are actually to reach consensus, kind of like our nodes gossiping with each other to establish consensus. But of course, Hedera doesn't count any of those transactions when we talk about TPS and transaction volume on the network. But that didn't stop the author from CryptoSlate from citing a tweet. And let's make it a rule that random tweets on the internet should not be used by journalists as sources.
That's a good rule.
Right. The random tweet that he cited pretty much as fact said, "Sorry to break it to all the HBARbarians, but the majority of transactions are unnecessary, just as they are on Solana. HBAR only does between 3 to 5 TPS on average." Now, Hedera did contact them, and they put a small scrolling note at the bottom where Hedera tried to correct them. But considering they left up the portion of the article that called Hedera out, I don't think they really fully understood what that correction meant. But Hedera did put out a pretty cheeky tweet where they said, first they ignore us, then they laugh at us, then they write uninformed, poorly researched, and fundamentally inaccurate articles about us. Then we win. So, Jeremy, what are your thoughts around this stuff?
Well, they left it up because it's a hit piece, right? Yeah, so the TPS wars wages on. This is something that we've seen, quite a bit over the past few months, especially with the drastic jump in TPS on the Hedera network. I think other platforms are, it's getting to the point, as we've said in the past, that Hedera is becoming impossible to ignore. And so the harder it gets to ignore them, I think the more hit pieces and FUD that you'll see out there. But really, to me, at the end of the day, the question is this. right? What do we want to count as TPS? Okay, we could talk about all kinds of things. I mean, this, that, or the other thing. But at the end of the day, is it generating revenue for the network? If it's generating revenue for the network, then I'm counting that as a transaction, right? That's really the whole point. Why does anybody care about TPS in the distributed ledger world? I mean, for one thing, it shows the potential and the capacity of the network. That's a huge one. But really, at the end of the day, it's all about the bottom line. Is it providing value and return back to the network to make it more sustainable or not? If it is, and it's generating revenue for the network, it's a transaction in my mind.
Exactly. And of course, the transaction volume is mainly coming from Avery Dennison's Atma.io, which is using it for supply chain tracking. It's a use case outside of the crypto speculation space. But, it's one 100th of a cent for every single one of those. And when you're doing the kind of transaction volume that Atma.io is doing, it can actually get to the point where it can sustain Hedera's network. And that is the end goal of all of this, right?
Right. I wonder how the folks over at AdsDAX feel about seeing something like Atma.io come online. For a long time, it was AdsDAX that was kind of carrying the torch, so to speak. And now I believe that the torch has been passed. But we'll continue to see other projects like Atma.io come online. So I'm pretty excited to see the results.
Yeah, of course, the AdsDAX team, like you said, they were initially carrying that high transaction volume torch. They've taken a little bit of a hit recently as far as doing those kind of transactions, because the first thing that's cut when the economy took kind of a hit was the budgets for advertising. So they took a little bit of a hit as well, but I'm sure they're still adding transactions to the network. And it's the same team that's behind Yamgo. So they're still working pretty hard behind the scenes for sure. And the other piece of FUD that came out had to do with tokenomics. And this stuff comes on a fairly regular basis. But this one in particular was where an announcement was made by Hedera that they were making a payment to Swirlds Labs for services that will be rendered over the next 2 years. And what caught a lot of people's eye is it's 4 billion HBAR for the next 2 years. Now, I'm sure this was contractually agreed well before the actual price point was met, and they decided to take a 30-day average closing price prior to December 1st, 2022, which gave a price of approximately 4.5 cents, which of course, looking back, looks like a pretty darn good price. But what it's supposed to equal is about 90 million per year for 2023 and 2024. The initial payment was made on February 24th of about 1.5 billion HBAR, and another payment's going to go out on March 17th, and that one's going to be for about 2 billion HBAR. Now, Jeremy, when it comes to tokenomics and what the treasury is being used for, I look at one thing. When I first became involved in the Hedera space, they said that the Hedera treasury was going to be used for building out the network, for building out the ecosystem, and so forth. And as far as I see it, as long as the HBAR is being used for those things, I'm fine with it. I really don't have a problem for, you see big numbers going to the Swiss Hashgraph Association or going to the HBAR Foundation, and that's for ecosystem development. You see big numbers going to Swirlds Labs because they handle all kinds of things, including upgrading the code base for Hedera, the Hashgraph code base, coming up with new features like HTS, things like improvements on the protocol, like the Gossip protocol that we talked about before. There's all kinds of things. They have a big marketing team. They have developer relations. They do all kinds of things in the space. So there might be some little things that I'll nitpick and say, oh, they shouldn't be spending money on this or that. But generally, the treasury is being used as it's supposed to be used. What are your thoughts?
Well, it is being used the way that they said it was going to be used. So there's really not a whole lot of mystery there. They're big numbers, right? So I understand why people get concerned. And you could make an argument that, well, Swirlds is is the permanent council member. And so for them to be receiving payments from the treasury might be might raise some eyebrows, certainly. If I was going to complain about it, I would say, well, why didn't some of the other teams get a chance to bid on some of these contracts such that, maybe the development could have been spread across the ecosystem a little bit more? But when you look at the caliber of team over at Swirlds, we're talking about, some of the premier software engineers and data scientists in the world. So it's going to come with a high price tag. And really at the end of the day, the tokens, they've got to be distributed somehow, right? They've got to come out of the Hedera treasury and be distributed into the world at large so that they can be used. So while I understand some of the concerns that are out there, I think the Swirlds, if you were going to spend a lot of money on a team, I think the Swirls Labs team is definitely where I would put my money. And like you said from the beginning, I mean, this is how they said that they were going to spend the money, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's 100 people that work at Swirled, so it's all their salaries, but it's also things like ETH Denver, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. It's things like Consensus. Those booths are expensive, but we do need to have a presence at things like that as well. So it's not cheap to run these operations, but I think Swirlds Labs does a pretty good. But I also think you had a pretty good point that, hey, we might be able to bid this out and see if we can find other teams that can do some of these other parts as well. So either way, there's good things that come out of it. But these tokenomics things that frustrate the community are going to come out on a regular basis. But again, as long as the treasury is being used as initially advertised, I'm fine with it. All right, Jeremy. So I'm going to get into what we'll call the developer corner. And, ETH Denver is a huge mecca right now for all the developers working in the Web3 space. And we see that Hedera has a huge presence there. I think they're doing a really good job. We've seen some stuff come out as far as tweets that are happening there. It looks like they're having a really good time and also making some really big moves. We did see a great clip that really caught my eye from one of the greatest builders in our space, and that's Patches from hashgraph.io. So listen to his clip real quick.
Build solutions that any network can use. We were going to use Hedera to solve the common problems of Web3 of ease of use, cost, speed, scalability, and security. And then we'll create chain-agnostic tooling that facilitates interoperability and enables all networks to maximize their value by easily engaging Hedera services. Every blockchain has a trilemma problem. They've decided what they want to deal with, and we believe that HGraph.io and TurtleMoon can be supplements to the friction points you have on your native network. You do not need to change where you've invested years of your life, where you've invested a lot of money, but this patchwork of networks building together to create a Web2 experience on Web3 is necessary for adoption, and we believe this is the method in which we can achieve that. Thank you.
Jeremy, the thing that I liked about this is he wants the builders that are building in other ecosystems. You can continue building over there, but he's providing the tools to allow them to enhance what they're building using Hedera. And it's kind of like a Trojan horse, right? So you start to use little bits of Hedera to enhance whatever you're building, and you see the benefits of it. And then it starts to spark that thought process of what else can we do with this? Maybe we should move from this network over to Hedera. I see the same thing when I see Hashport, right? Hashport ports over assets from other ecosystems, and then they can use them within the Hedera ecosystem, within Hedera DeFi, and then they can start to see the benefits and, so on and so forth. And then they can see how they can really leverage the ecosystem as a whole. What are your thoughts about what we're seeing come out of ETH Denver and what Patches had to say?
Well, I love seeing the community rally, and especially like something ETH Denver. I mean, they're really kind of going into the lion's den there, with the kind of Ethereum maxis. So it's great to see that community's opened up. I knew that Hedera was going to have a pretty significant presence in ETH Denver this year. So I actually kind of took the different approach. I went down to Quantum Miami to get some Hedera representation down at Quantum Miami this year. And it was a great opportunity. The more that HBARbarians get out in the world and speak to people that are building on other platforms, the better. Because as I was talking about it, a lot of folks really just aren't aware of the value proposition of Hedera and what's even, what Hedera is even doing. So it's a great opportunity. And the more that I get out there and start rubbing elbows with folks and talking to people that are building on other platforms, they're starting to see the light, so to speak, right? I talked to, there's a number of influencers that while they do have NFT projects on other platforms, they're using Hedera. They have HBAR wallets like Walla Wallet, that are things that are kind of part of their tool bag, so to speak. So the word's starting to get out, and I wish I could have been at ETH Denver, but after Quantum Miami, I saw that we had some kind of refinement to do in our offer and ask as a product and as a team. So we backed off a little bit. We're kind of back to the drawing board, and we're working on some things. But it's great to see the HBARbarian folks out there at ETH Denver.
And like Patches with hgraph.io, there are so many teams that are building the tools that are necessary for our developers. And, we have LedgerWorks, we have Archaea, and another team that's doing that is KrypC. And I caught up with Moet. He's one of the team members there at KrypC that are building all kinds of fantastic things for our developers, for enterprises that are building in the space. So let's listen into that. Moet, can you tell us your mission at KrypC?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Our mission at KrypC is to enable fast track adoption of blockchain and I would say Web3 technologies by enterprises. We typically do this by leveraging on solutions, platform, and tools which we have tailored made to suit the enterprise needs for scale in a sustainable manner. And we had always focused on strong R&D and building such assets, and we have a dedicated team basically focused on one side solutioning and one side creation of new products which would basically help us in such journey and drive innovation and create greater value. By enabling fast track adoption of these technologies, we are helping companies stay ahead of the curve, which generally it will take some time. So by creating some ready-made tools and solutions, it helps us accelerate the journey of all the enterprises which we work for.
Yeah, so the more tools we can get in the hands of our developers, the better. I also noticed that you have some impressive partnerships with companies like SH Digital and Capturian. Can you tell us how they're leveraging your platform?
Yeah, so one of the thing is technology, but before that, what we do is being working on Hedera and know about blockchain protocol solutioning. We don't directly drive into technology. We get into some sort of consulting, and our objective is to do the end-to-end development from the consulting to the end of development. So for this, we have various tools. Basically, we directly don't get into understanding and getting into production. We understand that it is very important for our customers to basically first have a feel, okay, what are they going to derive? So basically we use these tools to create simple MVP applications first. So using these tools and I would say middlewares, it's very easy for us to have some use case embedded by sequence flow. And using the header HCS, HTS, we are able to quickly define, okay, this is the flow, this is a basic UI, and we focus more time on basically are we able to get the right solution in place, and then from the business perspective are we getting the right I would say the best of the Hedera ecosystem in terms of solving a business problem using blockchain technology. So once we mature into that, then again we use all the tools and then come out with a full plan. How do we go into the next stage of MVP and production? And we stay with them in the entire journey. Obviously, there are some tools and there are some wallets and the expertise which we have got working with Hedera and Hedera sets of tools and our own tools which we have made helped us in doing that. So our idea is basically to use Hedera in a most effective manner so that it is scalable, sustainable, and very cost effective.
All right, so let's tease that out a little bit on how you and your customers in turn are leveraging Hedera. You mentioned some of the services. Can you go into some more detail?
Yeah, for example, I mean, any project have three components, or I would say any application have three components. One is a wallet, creation of identity, and then putting some data onto the blockchain only for immutability and certain data for business processing, right? Certain times we require a smart contract, certain times we require data only for immutable thing. So we had created standard sets where basically you just need to define, okay, these are the user identities, these are the application flow they would be doing. For example, I am creating an invoice. So why to start developing from scratch how the field would look like? So we have a ready-made mapper for HCS where we define the data structure, and this data structure directly using our application leverages on HCS, and the data is put into HCS. And on the other side of the user interface or the application, you are able to see the similar application. I mean, the view of that application. So it basically accelerates. Otherwise, we will get into what is that invoice, what is that other data parameter, what are the identities we have to use. And then generally people start developing. So we basically get into a conceptualization state where we use this ready-made toolkits which we have made and then go ahead with that. So we have something on the identity side, something on the business application mapping side, something on the data visualization side, which makes it's us very easier to basically connect our customers and Hedera together and have them feel of how the application looks like, where is the data, and they are also able to understand the business benefits. And then we get into multiple phases of discussion. Are we using it correct way and how it's going to be? So that helps us.
And how has it been building on Hedera?
Yeah, building on Hedera has been very special for us. It was a strategic shift because being a blockchain company where we started, let's say, more than 5 years back, we used to work primarily on uh, Ethereum types of chains and then permission private ledgers. So it was quite different. We got used to working on those with such constraints. And when Hedera came and there was something called Hedera Consensus Service, which was totally different for us. We don't see any blockchain coming out with this type of service model. It was always about performing transactions or doing a smart contract execution. So HCS is basically a ready-made, a simple immutable data recording system, which I would call, which otherwise would have required us to build something called a distributed system, a smart contract, and overloading the transaction, native transaction ecosystem to achieve what HCS makes it so easy for us. Like we put a data on a topic ID and we get it back. Imagine doing this on a EVM chain, I mean, a normal EVM chain, you would need to create a smart contract. You will need to define some data parameters, and then you will define your own way of data semantics, put the data, and then you are recording that data into another offline storage and then exposing API. How much we would have done effort just to put something and letting others know or getting that data back. This actually have simplified a lot because we all need any blockchain, even Hedera Hashgraph for that matter, for immutable storage apart from tokens and other aspects. So this simplicity was quite surprise for us. And then if we go back, means go into the next Hedera token service, that was also like quite simple. It's like almost use an SDK and create it. Otherwise, you have to go into ERC 721, 1155 and non-standards. I won't say that they are not good, but for everything, we need not get into so much complexities of technologies. If people wants to create token, let them create. Obviously, we have matured even using smart contracts on Hedera and achieving the same. But this ease of things really make it quite adaptable and useful for developers and all the community. And then as KrypC, we are strong focus on sustainable domain and ESG. So it becomes a natural choice for us because it doesn't only operate on scale, it also consumes minimum energy. So that justifies for us that why we should be building a sustainable and ESG type of applications on Hedera. So it have this double advantage. And by leveraging Hedera, we are not only providing scalable, we have actually justified that this blockchain is not about consuming energy. It is not only scale, it uses techniques which is quite efficient, less energy consumption. So it really works out for us.
Yeah, it's great to hear about all those benefits of Hedera. And what's next for KrypC?
As I mentioned, we are already deep into Hedera, and as new features would come, we will definitely get into. We will continue our journey in providing enterprise the best way in which they could harness the advantage of blockchain technology, Hedera, and quickly get into the market and focus more on the use case. However, I see there are two things which we will be providing more focus going forward, apart from what we are doing is I think that is wallet and smart contract. Now we see the world of Web3 apps have taken a very good market. There are a lot of dApps coming, a lot of integrations are happening. You will see a lot of DeFi apps coming. The wallet side, I think, to make it compatible, that developers of, for example, other protocols, how they could leverage the same toolkit and then quickly move towards Hedera, there is something which we need to work on. And smart contract, we need to come out with more examples. If we are able to bring such platform where existing developers of, let's say, all the blockchain community with less friction, they are able to use the Hedera ecosystem, I think it's a win-win. So we will continue to invest on that. And the other aspect is you would have heard about multi-signature and workflow-based signature mechanism. Hedera by default have that inbuilt. But the I would say not interesting thing is you take any of the wallets today, you could create an account. But if I have to create a workflow-based account, let's say you and me together should approve a transaction to happen, we don't have such applications available which make things very easy. Though technologically the foundation of Hedera has been that using console I could do that. So why not make it available to the user community, developer community, or the enterprise in an easier way? So that would be one of the focus we'll be having to take it to the next level, not only enterprise, to all the developer community, so that we have more dApps coming up and leverage on the Hedera ecosystem.
Understood. I want to thank you, Moet, you and all of KrypC for supporting the Hedera ecosystem, and thanks for coming on today and explaining it.
Great.
And one thing I wanted to cover before we get on to network analysis is Akura. So we covered them a while back, but they put out a tweet that caught my eye. They said, just a reminder before our beta launch, #build on Hedera. Sephora World is a project powered by Kura with more than 100 million monthly visitors and enabled by Advisory Deca 4, and they included the link for the official announcement. So this is something with 100 million users I definitely want to keep an eye on. So, all right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into network analysis. So, Jeremy, to start off, there was some concern earlier in the week because they saw that transaction volume dropped from about 550 transactions per second down to just under 300 transactions per second. Still pretty impressive, but just seeing that drop had some people concerned.
Sure, but if we take a look at Metrica, I believe that number's come back up.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has. So just over the past 24 hours, initially it jumped up to just under 700 transactions per second, but now we're averaging over 700 transactions per second. So it looks like Atmio has cranked up again. And I'm also happy with what I'm seeing as far as the smart contract volume. We're at over 23,000 smart contract calls over the past 24 hours, showing our DeFi space is pretty strong.
Nice.
Time to consensus is still under 5 seconds. Account growth this week has backed off a little bit, and I'm guessing that's because Lithos is starting to cool off a little bit, but we'll keep an eye on that in weeks to come. As far as the fungible token summary, there's not too much to pass on. We see our usual suspects in there. We have Sauce, Dovu, USDC, Wrapped HBAR, HellSwap, and so forth. And moving down to our NFTs, Ashfall is still the leader by far. All right, Jeremy, we'll leave most of the NFT commentary to Zepsi for next week, but I do have a little bit that I do want to pass on about my own startup, about Twigital. Of course, Twigital allows you to use photogrammetry to capture 3D objects, take physical objects, capture them with photogrammetry, and then use them throughout Web3. We're going through a team-only beta test right now. I actually put out a tweet of one of the first ones that I did because I was so happy with the results. I really had fun playing with it. I think a lot of other people are going to have fun playing with it as well. We're going to be doing a community beta test probably starting in a few weeks. On our website, we're going to have a splash page where you can register interest. We are also going to be down there at Consensus. That'll probably be during this community beta test, but we're going to have a booth set up within the Hedera booth where people are going to be able to bring their objects and pretty much Twidgetize them. So it's going to be a really fun process. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I've been showing all my friends and family the Twigital product. I mean, that kind of the beta test that you shared.
Mm-hmm.
People are getting really excited about it. I mean, everywhere, folks in all different types of industries, all different walks of life. So there's just so many different use cases for a product like Twigital. Kudos to you. Can't wait to see more.
Yep, and Walla Wallet is one of the first wallets that supports those USDZ files that Twigital creates, so we really appreciate that. And then we're looking to move from that closed community-only beta to open beta probably in early summer. So it's going to be a fun process to go through. But with all of that out of the way, let's get into DeFi. Starting off with Saucer Swap, the total value locked has dropped significantly over the last week to just over $22 million. A lot of that drop can be attributed to the lower cryptocurrency prices, but I think they've also lost some TVL to Pangolin. Looking at the farming rewards on some of their popular trading pairs, HBAR USDC is at 48%, HBAR Sauce is at 34%, and HBARX is at 15%. And moving over to Pangolin, which is now in the number 2 spot as far as total value locked on our dexes at just about $8 million total value locked. The farming rewards on Pangolin are paid out in both HBAR and their native token PBAR. HBARX is sitting at about 27%, USDC HBAR is over 200%, HBAR PBAR is at 500%, USDC Tether is at 60%, and USDC PBAR is at 750%. Now I'm going to do a deeper dive into DEX tokenomics next week, but I did want to pass on that the total supply of PBAR is 230 million tokens that will be emitted over 30 months. And moving over to the cryptocurrency and HBAR markets, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, cryptocurrency has gotten hit pretty bad over the past 24 hours, with Bitcoin being down about 5% over the past day and about 7% over the past week. As with many of the altcoins, HBAR has underperformed, being down about 20% over the past week and about 5% over the past 24 hours. And the struggles in the cryptocurrency markets are pretty much isolated to crypto because other risk assets like stocks had a great day on Friday. And moving over to the HBAR chart, right now we're sitting at just between 6.4 and 6.5 cents. If we go down again, I hope we catch some support at about 6.2 cents. And if we can turn things around, the first area of resistance would be around 7 cents. All right, Jeremy, that's all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the community?
Yeah, a couple things. So we did add a tab to our website we added a subscribe tab. So we want folks that use Walla Wallet to be able to get in contact with us easily. So hopefully folks that are out there that use Walla Wallet and like the product will hop over to our website, click that subscribe link, and sign up for our early adopters list. That's really how we share our share perks and giveaways and updates on the latest and greatest in the Hedera ecosystem and things happening with Walla Wallet. Our staking feature, the Hedera native staking feature on Walla Wallet, is really taken off. We're seeing a lot of great traction. So thank you so much for what you do to help promote our product and our brand. We've worked really hard on making the absolute safest mobile wallet in the ecosystem, period. So we take a lot of pride in that, and we're seeing some of the results. So that's great. And then also coming down the line, so we recently integrated with Sardine.ai. Sardine is a fiat ramp, and they're coming out with some really cool things in the very near future. So we look forward to supporting things like USDC is really important, and also a fiat off ramp. So there's plenty of great things coming from Walla Wallet in the near future. So we hope folks stay tuned. And then kind of the last little thing that I wanted to do was give a shout out to the HBAR Foundry. So the HBAR Foundry, folks that were on the collaborative Twitter spaces that the foundation held I believe it was last week. So folks may have heard a little bit about the HBAR Foundry in the HBAR Foundation Twitter spaces last week. So the HBAR Foundry's been out. It's been around since 2020. Basically what we're there to do is solve problems, set standards in the Hedera ecosystem, and also just as friends, we kind of blow off steam and talk about all kinds of things on Fridays. We do have a Discord. We're really working right now. We're working hard on getting line of sight into both software and business developments within the Hedera ecosystem. I think it's really important that we're able as a community to kind of keep an eye on the things that are happening in the space. Of course, the HIPs and GitHub are a great way to do it. And I know folks are talking in things like Discords and Slacks, but Discord, Slack, Twitter, these are transitory conversations, right? These kind of streaming chats, just when it happens, and then it's hard to find later on in the future. So we're really looking for a solid way, and we think we found it, a solid way of making these conversations indexable, searchable, such that the community can kind of keep an eye on important developments that are going on with the ecosystem. And the HBAR Foundry is open to everybody. If you're interested in Hedera and you're building on or around Hedera, or you're looking at building on or around Hedera, we welcome everybody into the HBAR Foundry. So hopefully people will pop over there. We have got a Discord channel going, so people are more than welcome to join us. And we meet 3 times a week in Zoom sessions. So if you want to hop into one of those, people are welcome as well. So hopefully people will drop on by and check out the HBAR Foundry.
Yeah, love the HBAR Foundry. It is a great place to collaborate with everybody else that's building in the space. Love Walla Wallet. I use it every day. Just to give everybody a heads up, we are going to have our Twitter space again next week on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. That one's going to be on NFTs, and we're going to have koalas on there. We're going to have dead pixels. I think I'm going to get my partner from Twigital, so if you have any interest in any of those projects, and we'll probably have some more NFT projects as well, certainly swing on by. I'm also going to try to get Brian Brooks on for an interview, so stay tuned for that. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.